everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Tamara. For those who know me, welcome back. For those ones who are visiting for the very first time, thank you for visiting, thank you for watching. This is a channel in which we like to talk openly but honestly about art and culture. So after a little bit of hiatus, I want to start a Eurovision series. Eurovision is something very popular here in Europe, but I do appreciate that not everybody know the origins of Eurovision, or for those one outside of Europe, you don't even know what Eurovision is. So I want to start by giving you a little bit of an introduction, and then later on we will dive in and make a review on this year's Eurovision, and there is a lot to be talked about. So Eurovision, actually, the real name is the Eurovision Song Contest. Actually, the real name is the annual Eurovision Song Contest because it is celebrated annually at around mid-May. And the first year of its broadcasting was in 1956. The Eurovision Song Contest, it's kind of a reflection of the political, cultural, economical, social, and technological development in post-war Europe. Some people like to say that Eurovision is like a platform, a specific battleground between capitalists versus communists, pro-Europeans versus Eurosceptics, and reactionaries versus revolutionaries. It is a very European affair, and it likes to show the common cultural references that we Europeans enjoy. And it is an opportunity for each national broadcasting organization to send somebody on a very public and large stage to basically represent each country. The impact of Eurovision is, cannot even be described. I mean, everybody knows what Eurovision is. And you may love it or you may hate it, but everybody knows what Eurovision is all about. There have been some accusations put forward, such as, for example, the type of content that Eurovision show. Some people like to call it a déclassé popular music contest because some of the choices in Eurovision have been interesting, to say the least. It's not your popular music award show. It's something more than that. It's an opportunity for each country to splash out, and sometimes they go with very interesting choices. Each to their own. I'm not here to judge which one is the best or not. It's just that overall, it's considered like a déclassé popular music contest. It has also been accused of excessive costs, which is something that each country that has to host Eurovision has been dealing with. And to a certain extent, it is a valid accusation, but also you really need to invest money on the Eurovision Song Contest if you are hosting, because at the end of the day, you're branding your own country. So it's something that, although it is an accusation or a criticism, it is a necessary thing to do. It kind of makes sense. It has also been accused of somehow cementing national stereotypes, and this goes back to the previous point of déclassé popular music and some of the choices that have been made throughout its history. But all of this play to the cultural kitschiness that Eurovision is, and for all its criticism and accusations, they have also given us global stars. The first global stars that they have given us, ABBA. They won in 1974 for the song Waterloo. So, and ABBA is ABBA. There is nothing that you can really say against them. Another very popular act was Celine Dion, that although she is French-Canadian, she represented Switzerland in 1988 and she won the contest, or better said, her song won the contest. It was conceived by the European Broadcasting Union in the 1950s, and listen to this, the intention was apparently to develop Western Europe's emerging TV services by creating a show that could be simultaneously and transnationally broadcasted. The creators of Eurovision branded this event as a way to cement a European identity, a post-war collaboration or cooperation between countries, and further interactions in the diasporic, post-colonial, regional, religious identity of each country. Now, one of the mantras that the Eurovision Song Contest has repeated over and over again, and to a certain extent hasn't really been consistently successful at maintaining, is that this song contest is precisely that. It's a song contest. It's an apolitical event. Lots of inconsistencies with this, as we will look in its history. Because what's a political event? It's a very interesting question that not everybody gets together on the answer. But we will develop on that. It has been successful at forging national and ironically not transnational icons. So that's why in its 50 plus years of history, or 60 years, or whatever many years since 1956. I'm not very good at math, as you can tell. But we only had really two major global acts in ABBA and Celine Dion. What about the rest? Well, the so-called dream of European integration has ironically strengthened resilient national identities. So we have a lot of national icons that may not be necessarily recognized internationally, which is kind of interesting because your voice, your song, your face has been put on a platform that, 500 million people look at. And yet you may end up be really only famous in your country, which is not, there is nothing wrong with that. It's just, I'm just saying, it's ironic that participants end up being more of a national thing than an international one. The next point is an interesting one because this whole idea of Western European integration, this is a Western European concept, let's never forget that, versus the exclusion of Eastern European broadcasters. So at the very beginning, we had a bunch of mostly Western European countries participating. We had Italy, we had Luxembourg, we had Belgium, we had France, we had the United Kingdom, but everybody else on the other side of the Iron Curtain weren't exactly invited to join the party. And that's because of the exceptional circumstances of their political background. So countries, Cold War countries like Azerbaijan, Belarus, Russia is in another language. See, the integration of Europe is happening right now. So the Cold War countries weren't really invited. Cold War countries, I mean, all of them were part of the Cold War. But let's say the communist bloc wasn't really invited to the party because, they were communists and they were under a dictatorship, and that's wrong. And we cannot give them airtime. We cannot give them, their dues. But ironically, in Western Europe, there were other dictatorships happening in the 70s and in the 80s, which is the case of Greece, Portugal, or Spain. Spain, very famous with Franco, for example. Yet they were part of Eurovision. So Eurovision, it's not only a way for you to show your entry, it's also a way to brand or rebrand your country to European audiences. So to have a dictatorship in certain countries, it's not as bad as having dictatorships in other countries. This is the reason why the whole apolitical event doesn't really work out. And this is an ongoing inconsistency that Eurovision has had throughout history. Now, each entry, particularly in the last 20 years, have been moving further away from the song, because at the end of the day, this is a song contest, so it's supposed to be about the music. It's supposed to be about you voting for who you think it's the best. But that has shifted. So nowadays it's not really about the song anymore or the music. So it's not really about the art. Ironically, it's more about who is making the best statement. And the statements, ironically, are politically symbolic, whether it's about ethnicity, gender, nationality, race, religion, and later on this ongoing thing on sexual orientation. So ironically, although we say it's an apolitical event, it's more than ever political. It's very politicized. But I guess some people will say that, well, as long as you don't go out and support a particular candidate, a particular president, or a particular dictator, shall we say, everything else, it's fine. Which has been pretty much the case in the last 20 years. So this fantasy of a unified Europe, which is what Eurovision likes to portray itself as an event, it's just that. It seems to be just a fantasy. So although you claim about a European identity, please remember that you didn't include everybody in Europe. You just included the people that were kind of like you and had your same quote unquote values. And that's an ongoing theme, because today the Eurovision Song Contest and the European Broadcasting Union still exclude some people. Russia, for example. Okay, so Russia, it's in a military conflict with Ukraine, but initially they weren't supposed to be kicked out from both Eurovision and the EBU. They were only kicked out after other countries, 11 of them, threatened to leave if Russia wasn't excluded. So because this represented more of a loss of revenue than anything else, both the EBU and Eurovision ended up acquiescing those 11 countries and kicking Russia out because Russia is involved in a military conflict. I'm not here to say Russia is good or bad. I'm just saying that as a country, we shunned it away. But on the other hand, there are other participants, such as, for example, Israel, that's also today part of a ongoing military conflict with its neighbors. And yet Israel is still there. Nobody complained about Israel's presence. Nobody threatened to leave. Nobody put forward economical sanctions. We have done so to some countries, but to other countries, we just play dumb, I guess. I'm not saying that the exclusion of Russia is bad and the inclusion of Israel is good. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just making a parallel. At the end of the day, if this is an apolitical event, then we should act like it. And it doesn't seem to be the case. It seems that we prefer some people over others. So to what extent are we being apolitical? This is something that we will further develop in our next chapter. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background because I think it's important to understand the roots of Eurovision to further explain the problems ahead. Now, I'd like to disclose that personally, I'm a huge Eurovision fan. I love to sit down and watch the different acts. I love the ridiculousness about it. I love the kitschiness about it. I love to sit down and say, I like this better. And up until recently, I could even name you the songs that I thought were super cool and worth to either buy or download. This is no longer the case in 2024. And this is the reason why we need to analyze what the hell is going on. Because this is supposed to be a song contest. And today is everything but that. Why? What's going on? So today we talked about the origins. And now we will further develop in the next episode on what's going on really. And particularly in this year's Eurovision that has been perhaps the most controversial ever. And kind of sad, because if I have to name one song that I think stood out in this year's final, I don't have any to show. And why is that? What's going on? Okay, so as a fan, I need to sit down and have an open and honest conversation about what's going on. This is a huge pop cultural event, and it affects directly or indirectly our lives. So this is it for this chapter. Thank you very much for sticking up until the end. We will further develop, and I'll see you in the next chapter.